I just lift up your kids, Bob and B. Maxwell. And God, right now, we simply rejoice. We pause to rejoice that B is with you, that she is in your arms, and that, God, that her journey here is over. Bob's continues, but God, I thank you personally for the testimony of your grace that their lives have been, for young people like me to see two people who have loved each other through everything, who have been a picture of sacrifice and of commitment, and God, to see their grandkids, their kids and their grandkids participating in the legacy that you've written through them. And I can only imagine what heaven's going to be like with them in it, and what it is right now with B in it. So, God, our prayers are for Bob, that God, you would just be with him in this time as he's in the hospital, in the midst of mourning the loss of his soulmate, his wife. And so I just pray that you'd be with him, that you surround him with love, compassion, and mercy, and grace. And thank you for him, God. Amen. So also, I just got this. Is this, you guys, is that new? Is this something? This was just on, it's the giving plate. Oh, okay. That was here. Okay, cool. All right, never mind. Okay, got you. Old news. Old news. Still good news, but old news. Okay. So one of the things I wanted, my name's Mike. I'm one of the pastors here. We've been going through the book of Leviticus. Leviticus! Anybody with me? No, I didn't think so. No. We've been on this journey through the Bible. Okay, so we started last fall in Genesis, and then in January picked up Exodus, and now we are in the thriller of Leviticus. So last week was our first sermon in that series. We're going through that book, and then next week we're going to pick up part 2. In the meantime, and Yunker, our lead pastor, will be back for that. So if you don't like what I say today, then just come back next week, and then it'll be all good. You'll get regular Sunday at Real Life, but. I thought one of the things that I've been at this church for almost 3 years now. In June, it'll be 3 years. Longest I've been at church in a long time. It was kind of hopping around a while. But one of the things that I realized that I really appreciate is the way we approach the Bible. And we have Bibles for everybody. We're in a very literate culture, right? We pretty much, I imagine almost, if not everybody in this room knows how to read. So typically the way we approach scriptures is we like read, and the story is through this book. Sometimes some churches they have altars where they like open the Bible, and it's like always open, and it's this holy book, and so we at Real Life, we acknowledge the inspiration of the scriptures, and the fact that the Bible is a book unlike any other book. It's holy. It's absolutely amazing. It's inspired, but it's sometimes for me, I've gotten lost in putting it so high above everything else that when I read it, it's almost like these blinders come on and I don't see it as real. It's like, oh, this book is about like holy people. This book, it really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's just telling me how to be a better person so that I can be like that. And I don't know if that's something that you struggle with, but for me, it sometimes, especially in the past, I felt like the Bible was this list of expectations that God had for me. It's like it's an owner's manual, and God is the instructions for life, and stuff like that. And not that there's a lot of instructions in here, but there's so many deep, real stories when you sit down and read it. And that's one of the things that has really opened this church has really opened my heart to. So there's a person in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that I resonate with more than anybody else. And he just so happens to be the person who is brought up, besides Jesus, probably, I'm going to assume, because I did a lot of work on it, more than any other character in the Gospels. And I'll give you a hint. It's one of 12, Jesus' 12 disciples. Anybody got a clue as to who that is? What did you say? Peter. First try. Well done. Last service there was like a bunch of different ones. But yeah, Peter. So we're going to look at Peter's story today. And I want, if you have any anxiety about needing to like flip to the right page at the right time, we're going to go all over the Gospels. Just take a minute and you can just put the book down. We're gonna be in it. Just put the book down. You don't have to look at every passage, but just listen to the story. So I'll just get into it. Peter's story starts when his brother Andrew comes up to him. Andrew just so happened to be one of the disciples of John the Baptist, the guy who prepared the way for Jesus. He kind of laid out the red carpet for Jesus, right? And Andrew is one of his disciples, so he kind of is stalking Jesus a little bit. He's like hiding behind stuff, and then Jesus sees him and he's like, you don't have to do that. You can just hang out with me. And so he ends up spending a whole day with Jesus after Jesus kind of confronts him about it. And they hang out, and he goes home to Peter, his name's not Peter yet, Simon, his brother Simon, and he's like, Simon, you would not believe what just happened. I met this guy. His name's Jesus, and you're not going to believe me. You're not going to believe whatever. You're not going to believe me. And he's like, what? What is it? What? And he's like, you know how all our religion is all about the coming Messiah that was promised, the one who's going to like deliver the nation of Israel and is going to proclaim freedom to captives, and he's going to make blind people see, and he's the anointed one. He's like, yeah, I know about that. He's like, well, I kind of met him, and I want you to meet him. And so he brings his brother Simon to Jesus, and he's like, Jesus, Simon, Jesus. And there's this moment in the Gospel of John where Jesus looks at Simon, sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. He looks at Simon and he says, you are Simon, son of John, but you will be called Cephas. Cephas is Aramaic for the word rock, translated into Greek, Petra, which is where we get the word Peter. So he says, you are the rock. It's kind of like, whoa. And then I just remember he like puts his hand on his shoulder, and then you're the rock. And then he just walks off, and everyone's like high-fiving Peter, like, dude, Jesus just said that about you. That's awesome. Like, whoa, that's crazy. And he's like, whoa, he's just like starstruck, totally starstruck. He can't believe what's happening. And that's how Jesus and Simon meet. And he's referred to as a few different things, Simon Peter, or Peter. But he just, what's a rock? What do you know, like, what is a rock, like what does that mean? Solid. What else? Strong. Enduring. Immovable. What else? Any other? Foundation. Yeah, so he doesn't know Peter from Adam. Or Simon from Adam, and he goes up and he's like, you are strong. You are immovable. You are a foundation. He's like, whoa. He's like, you obviously don't know me. and I say that because the next time they come across each other, Jesus, his movement is kind of gaining steam. Crowds are coming. People are listening. People are telling other people, there's this man named Jesus. He's a prophet. And so this one day, there's this crowd of people around Jesus. He's at the shore of this lake. And there's these fishermen who had their boats up after a whole night fishing. They come up, empty nets. They had a bad night. And the crowd's getting so big that Jesus, in order to be able to address everybody and see everybody, he asks this guy named Simon, who just so happens to have a boat, if he can get in his boat and go out so that he can kind of step back and see the crowd better. Okay, so he gets out in the boat, and the people are out on the shore. He's in the water, and he's preaching to them. He's proclaiming the good news. The kingdom of God is at hand. And then when he's done, he dismisses everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I'll be here all week. And then he sits down, and he says to Simon, "Hey, Simon, go out a little further." Okay, why? Just do it. Just go out a little further. And he's like, okay. So go out a little further. And then he's like, so throw your net out. Jesus, we just did this all night. There's nothing there. I kind of do this for a living. I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit. And Jesus just gives him this look like, I dare you. And so he's like, all right, if you say so. So he throws his net out, and he's like pulling it in, like, okay, and then soon it gets tighter, and he looks down, and it's it's teeming with fish. Fishing with team. It's teeming with fish, and Finding Nemo style, he can't even get it up out of the water. He calls his other fisherman buddies over. They come over with another boat, and before they know it, both boats are filled with fish. Like, there's no room for them. They just are in the boat. And that's when it clicks for Peter. When he realizes this guy, he is not your average human being. He is holy. He is different. He is special. This Jesus. He can do anything. And walking through the fish, he comes down to Jesus and he gets on his knees. So the fish are probably like up around his waist, but he doesn't care because he wants to tell Jesus something. And this is what he says. He fell at Jesus' knees and he said, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." What would cause such a joyous occasion? What would cause him to tell Jesus to go away from him? There seems to be, this is really the first glimpse at Peter's heart that we get. The first time he raises his voice in the Gospels, he condemns himself. Surely whoever you are, I don't totally understand it, but whoever you are far higher than me. And if you knew me, you would not want to be around me. And we begin to see that there's this lie that Peter believes. No one would ever want to be with you. No one would ever actually want to be your companion. No one would ever actually pick you if they had one person to pick. No one would ever actually want to be your friend, to walk with you, to be your lover. All of the above. There's this lie that creeps in. And when I read that, that's how I know it's real, because, hey, I feel the same thing every day. And so we see Peter's estimation of himself. Jesus, if you really knew my heart, you would not want to be with me. Trust me. Trust me. Well, Jesus doesn't even acknowledge his shame at all. And he says this, looking around at the fish, this is nothing. You're going to be a fisher of men. So follow me. So they go back to shore, and they leave the biggest catch of fish that they've ever had there. And they follow Jesus. And as they walk away, people are like pointing and whispering to each other, like, because now Jesus has 4 disciples. Andrew and Peter and James and John. They're all fishermen, and he calls all of them to follow him. So they like walk off together, and everyone's like, wow, what was that? And Peter's like, people are talking about me. People see me. People are looking at me. And that's where Peter, we see from the story that he does not, at least, what I take from that is he at least does not see himself as acceptable to Jesus. There's an element there where he sees, I am not worthy, I'm not acceptable to you. And so in following Jesus, he's like, he called me the rock. Now I'm following him. I gotta be strong. I gotta be a mighty foundation. I gotta be tough. And so he starts on this journey, realizing that he is not acceptable, at least thinking that, to make himself acceptable. And here's how I know that. A little while later, Jesus' movement is gaining some steam. People started to be persecuted. John the Baptist, who is the one I said kind of roll out the red carpet, he proclaimed the good news about Jesus coming. He gets his head chopped off. And it's starting to get real. Like, whoa. People are dying now because they're following Jesus. And so it's one day, Jesus, he says to his disciples, they're at the shore again, he says, you guys go out on the sea, on the lake. I'll meet you on the other side. They're like, okay, yes, sir. And so they get in the boat and they go out. It's like sun's probably setting, but it's windy, hard time getting across. And Jesus, meanwhile, goes up on the mountainside and he prays. Well, in the middle of the night, as they're trying to make their way across the lake, making really slow progress, one of them sees something out on the water. Hey, what is that? And they see kind of this figure. Like, well, maybe there's their boat. And then they realize there's like this person that's not sinking, but there's no boat. And they conclude that it's a ghost. There's this ghost walking toward them on the water. And they just freak out. Like imagine they're in this little boat, probably from that table maybe a little bit longer. And they're just like trying to hide behind each other. Like, what's a ghost? And they freak out. And then the ghost speaks. If it weren't bad enough that he's walking toward them, he speaks. And Matthew's version says, "It is I," which I don't know if Jesus actually meant to say this, but you could render that I am. He says, take courage. I am. Don't be afraid. Which is the only thing that they're thinking about is don't be afraid. That's like telling a woman in labor to relax. Just relax. You don't do that. Okay? So then all these guys are freaking out, and Peter, he's like, that's Jesus. That's Jesus. And he's like, he said, take courage. And so and I think maybe it's because it's what I've done for so long. I wonder if Peter, as he kind of is processing all this, and he thinks, what would be the most courageous thing I can do? What would be the most brave thing I can do right now? And he concludes that it would be walking out on the water to Jesus. I wonder if he does that because he wants to show Jesus that he can do it. Jesus, I'm the rock. Except rock sinks, so that's not a good analogy right now. But I'm strong, and I can do it. And so he says, Jesus, if that's you, call me out on the water. And he's like, he kind of starts to he starts to puff his chest out, like, yeah, come on, I could do it. And then the other guy's like, no, don't do it. And he's like, I'm gonna do it. And Jesus says, this will be interesting. Come. And so he takes one foot out, puts it on the water. Takes the other foot out, puts it on the water. And he just it's like he's walking on a tightrope. And he's like, whoa. And then he looks back to see that the boat he was formerly in is now out of his grasp, floating away. And the only thing left to do is to walk toward Jesus. And so he slowly makes his way. But before he knows it, he lifts up his head and he realizes where he is. The wind is blowing against his face, blowing his hair over. And he realizes, wait, I'm walking on water. I shouldn't be able to do this. And then he starts to sink. As soon as it says he was afraid because he saw the waves. And as he's sinking, he says, Lord, save me. And Jesus grabs his hand, lifts him up. And what does Jesus say? O you of little faith, why did you doubt? See now, okay, so in my life, backtrack like, I don't know, 5 years. When I read that, why did you doubt, you of little faith? I thought of that as like a coach when the quarterback comes to the sideline after a totally boneheaded play. He's like banging him on the helmet, like, what were you thinking, man? You can do this, like get back in there. And he's like, whoa, like, come on. You know better than that. I always used to read that like that. Like Jesus is like, oh, Peter, get your act together. Come on. Jeez, how many miracles do I have to do for you to believe in me? But as I've moved from what we call the room of good intentions and spent more time placing my trust in the grace of God, I wonder if Peter's not necessarily like condemning him as he is simply pointing out that Peter's interest here is not in trusting Jesus. It's in impressing Jesus. He wanted to show Jesus that he could do it. I can make it. This whole, however old Peter was when Jesus met him, I don't know, 20, 25 or something, maybe even 15, we don't know. The whole life of sin before he met Jesus, now he's going to make up for it. Now he's going to show Jesus that this garbage pile of his life right here, he's left that behind. It's gone. I'm totally committed to you, Jesus. You can count on me. Only to fall into the water. And Jesus says, trust. It's just trust, Peter. I'm like, let's go back into the boat. And so they get back in the boat. Peter drenched. Jesus completely dry. And they make their way. And Peter, he continually snowballs this journey to make him to build himself up in such a way that he can show Jesus that he is worthy, that he is acceptable. And the way to do that, he thinks, is to basically build a spiritual resume that will show God, look at everything that I've done for you. When Jesus encounters the rich young ruler, right? He says, what must I do, to follow you? I can't remember exactly how he says it, but he says, sell all your possessions, give them to the poor, and follow me. And it says the young man walked away sad because he had much. He was unwilling to part with his worldly possessions. And so they all watch him walk away. And Peter is very quick to point out, Jesus, we've given up everything. I have nothing left. I've given you everything. Haven't I? As if, I wonder if he woke up every day or went to bed every day keeping score, measuring himself. Was today good enough for God? Did I do what God wanted me to do today? And so he's so quick to point out what he's doing right. Because he so longs for the affection of a loving God. And he's willing to put on any clown suit. He'll do anything just to find favor with Jesus. When Jesus invites Peter, John, and James, he's like, you guys come with me, and they go up this mountain. And when they go up this mountain, Jesus is transfixed before them. He starts to glow like this lightning white color, and he starts to kind of like float in the air, like, oh! And then Moses is there, and Elijah's there all of a sudden, and Peter, John, and James are like, what? These are like the guys that everybody has like told us stories about. Like, this is our whole childhood is learning about these guys, and here they are in front of us. And Peter blurts, he's like, Jesus, I will build a shelter for you and for Moses and for Elijah, and we can hang out here. And I'm like, why does he feel the need to do that for these two guys who are obviously in heaven? Like, what shelter are you going to build for them? They're from heaven. But he feels this need to insert himself in the situation. Any place he gets a chance, he wants to show Jesus that he can please him. And because that's what happens in the room of good intentions. In the room of good intentions, your intentions are God, and your goal is to please him. And so you strive to be who he wants you to be. And Peter's conclusion is, he wants me to be the rock. And so I've got to show him that I am. I've got to prove it to him. And it actually takes another twist as Peter's story continues. There's a point where him and Jesus kind of get into it. Jesus is further along in his ministry, and the disciples are with him, and he says, who do people say I am? To them. And they say, well, because he's kind of hidden his real identity a little bit, which is kind of strange. But he's like, who do people say I am? And I think this is actually he warns them not to tell anybody this after, but he says, they say, people think you're like Elijah, or that you're like Jeremiah, one of the prophets, or some people think you're John the Baptist. Basically, people don't know who Jesus is. They don't really get it. They're like, this guy's awesome, but who is he? And he says, who do you say I am? And Peter pushed everyone out of the way. Jesus, you are the Messiah. You're the Son of the living God. And he looks at Peter and he says, blessed are you, Simon, son of John. You didn't, what you just said to me, you didn't hear that from men. You heard that from my Father. And you know name I gave you, Peter? Yeah, well, I gave you that name because through you, I'm going to establish my church. I'm going to build my church through the rock, through you. And the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I'll give you the authority and the keys to the kingdom. And he's like, that's what I'm talking about. He's like, this is what he's been working for this whole time. And there's so many other stories where Peter's quick to point out, he's quick to keep the kids from coming to Jesus. He's always asking Jesus, what did you mean by that parable? Were you talking about us? And he's always measuring himself. And now he's finally earned the approval of Jesus. I'm the rock. Step into the ring with the rock. And then, right after he said he will establish his church and the gates of Hades will not overcome it, Jesus says, in the meantime, I'm actually going to suffer at the hands of the religious leaders, the religious elite that Jesus was bumping up against over and over and over again as you read the Gospels. I'm going to suffer at their hands. They're going to falsely put me on trial, and I'm going to be crucified. I'm going to be killed. And I'm going to be 3 days later, I'm going to raise from the dead. They don't hear that part because they're too caught up on, wait, what? You're going to die? That can't happen. And so Peter, I imagine he grabs Jesus by the arm, turns him around, and he says, never, Lord, this will never happen to you. I'm going to be the starting quarterback? You want me to be the starting quarterback? Well, I got a message for you. I'm not going to let that happen. That's not in the playbook. And what does Jesus say? Get behind me, Satan. Whoa! For you do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of man. And he says, how are you going to keep me from fulfilling what the Scriptures have said about me? How are you going to keep me from saving the world? And so we see where Peter's desire to find approval and acceptance from Jesus now turns, once he feels like he has it, now turns into the fact that he's going to be Jesus' bodyguard. He's got the earpiece in. He's got the armor. He's got the sword at his side. He isn't going to let anything happen to this guy. It's the next step in the evolution that he experiences in the room of good intentions. Where now pleasing God means protecting and defending God. I saw a movie about that. Defending God. And so it gets, we see different aspects of it too, where now Peter is in this phase where he's got all the confidence in the world. He can do anything. He is with the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and nothing's going to stop them. They're going to reclaim their nation from the tyranny of Rome, and they are going to take back what is God's. And then the night before Jesus dies, his disciples celebrate the Passover meal. To remember what happened in Egypt when God sent the 10 plagues, and they had the blood of the lamb on the doorpost to mark out who was an Israelite and who wasn't. So every year they would remember that event, the fact that God spared them, that God liberated them from the slavery that they were experiencing in Egypt. God saw and heard them, so they celebrate this meal together. Before they do, Jesus, he wraps a towel around his waist and he gets down on his hands and his knees, and he washes each one of his disciples' feet. He goes around the table, and they would have been kind of reclining, kind of like this, right? Yeah. And so their feet are there, and he just washes them, and their feet would have been nasty. They had sandals, and there's a story in my daughter's storybook Bible called Stinky Feet, which is about this story, where it talks about how their feet would have been so nasty walking through the streets there. And so Jesus, Almighty God, gets on his hands and his knees, and he washes his friend's feet. And then he gets around to Peter. And Peter says, Lord, are you going to wash my feet too? Jesus says, you don't understand it now, but you will later. Just trust me. And what does Peter say? You will never wash my feet. Never. I'm guessing here, but if I were Peter and I said that, it would be because I'm not done proving myself to you yet. I haven't made it. I haven't closed the gap on who you want me to be yet. I'm still striving, Jesus. And if you clean me now, then I won't be able to. That's like wiping everything off my resume, Jesus. I need to show you my allegiance. You don't need to wash me. I can show you how I can make it out of this mess. Let me prove it to you. And Jesus says, if you want to have any part of me, then you will let me wash your feet. And then what does he say? Then not just my feet, but all of me. And he turns this act of mercy and grace and service that Jesus wants to give to him, this gift that Jesus wants to give to him, he turns it into a way that he can, again, show how dedicated he is. Show, Jesus, I'm all in. There's nothing that's going to keep me back from you. Wash all of me. All these guys, you just wash their feet. You're going to wash all of me. See how great I am? And Jesus is like, slow down. I just want to wash your feet here. It's not that complicated. And so Jesus, in the Gospel of John, this is really interesting to me. This night, the period from when the disciples take the Passover meal to when Jesus goes to the Garden of Gethsemane and then gets arrested and then gets put on trial again and again and again and then gets taken to the cross, that takes up a good chunk of the Gospel of John and takes up a good chunk of a lot of the other Gospels. And it's really the thing that all of them share is the story of the crucifixion. And at this meal, they're all together. And Jesus says, so I don't mean to make things awkward, but one of you is going to betray me. And it says that a dispute rose amongst them as to who it would be. They're all like, you listen, no, don't look at me, man. I'm not going to, look at my track record, okay? I'm not going to disobey Jesus. I'm not going to disown him. I'm not going to betray him. I would never do that. And it says in the Gospel of John, Jesus is here, John's here, Peter's here, and Peter leans over to Jesus and he says, who is it? Who is going to betray him? Because Jesus says, I know who it is. He says, who is it? And John asks Jesus, who is it? And he says, it's the one I'm going to give this bread to. And somehow he gives it to Judas Iscariot without everyone noticing. They're probably too busy arguing. It's going to be you, it's going to be you. And Jesus gives Judas the bread and he says, go do what you have to do. Judas gets up to leave. They think he's going to do something with money because he was their money. He was like the money guy, like would keep track of like the money in their ministry or whatever. And so he goes off. And in the midst of this, as they're arguing, Jesus is giving them the Lord's Supper. Like he's telling them like the sacred meal given each week. And all they're doing is arguing with each other. And then then they start this argument about who's the greatest. Because if you're going to talk about who's the worst, then you got to talk about who's the greatest. And they're all about keeping score. And Peter is often at the butt of this argument. Jesus silences them. He says, guys. The Gentiles have kings. Right? They have rulers. And those rulers are served by their subjects. Who's greater? Obviously the ruler. The king is greater because he's the one who's served, who is served by others. But I am amongst you as one who serves. The greatest among you will be the one who serves. And then they sing a song. They go out and they begin to walk up this hill to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus says, also, by the way, I said I was going to be betrayed by one of you. Well, actually, all of you are going to fall away from me tonight. And Peter, as Jesus says, it says they're walking. Peter comes up to him like he's walking backward in front of Jesus. Like he says, even if all of them fall away, I won't. I will go with you to prison and to death. And Jesus is like, you're really setting yourself up for this. Peter, actually, it's funny you say that. Before